We'll try to we'll get to as many questions as we can. And without further ado, welcome Nickeema. Hey Kimi,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm doing good, excited.
That's good. All right, for those of you who don't know, Nickeema's my wife. And she's phenomenal. She is a licensed clinical social worker, who is very talented in the field, passionate about what she does, about mental and emotional uh, health and wellness, and also how that intertwines in the faith community. And it's something that I've never seen before. If it's been done before, I've never seen it done the way she's done it. And it's phenomenal and it's effective. I've seen so many and heard so many testimonies about people that she's spoken to, or people that she's helped along the way. So I'm excited to get this conversation started. So Nikima, are you excited?
I am.
Great. I'm super excited. So, how about you go ahead and tell us about yourself? Tell us about what you do.
Well, like you said, well, first, thanks for having me on Be the Light. Um, like you said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the mental health field for a little bit over 7 years now, working in outpatient mental health clinics. So what that means is like it's a particular setting where people come to get therapy, and then leave and go home. So outpatient, compared to like inpatient where people would be staying there. Um, I work with families, couples. I do group. I do individual therapy, and in this season, I'm more focused on supervising. So I have
Okay.
staff that I supervise of about maybe about 10 therapists that I supervise, that are each seeing a certain number of people on their caseload. Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so great. Hey, Laura. Uh, and thank you to everyone about my camera angle. Martine, apparently my head cut off.
It
Uh,
was.
okay. So, if in the chat, how's my view? Throw some hearts in there if it's good. All
Oh,
right. So,
that's cool.
Nihima, so tell us, what got you interested in mental health in the first place?
That's a good question. I remember in about ninth grade, yeah, like my first year in high school, I took a class, psychology. It was like an elective. And I was so interested, like, with what's going on, like how we think, the reason why we might have challenges in our relationships, and even seeing some people struggle within my family with mental health, issues that I didn't really understand what was going on because I was younger at that time. So I remember, like, in that class deciding I'm going to be a psychologist. I didn't even understand what that meant or like the trajectory. But what was under that was I wanted to help people in their mental health or their emotional health. So I'm not a psychologist, but at that time, that was the only label that I knew about that did that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what you said you're not a psychologist. So what is a psychologist versus what you do?
What we do can be similar. The psychologist by name or definition is basically pointing to the area of study or the degree someone has. So I
Okay.
have a degree in social work. That means that, well, I have a bachelor's in psychology actually, and my master's degree is in social work. Um, so someone that's a psychologist could have a bachelor's in psychology, and then they went on to do a PhD program in psychology, whether it be clinical psychology, counseling psychology. Like there's so many different.
Okay.
And then after they finished their doctorate and got those letters behind their name, so that's why they're a psychologist. But a psychologist is in my position, and I'm a social worker. So we're doing the same things in the field, but the background of the education can be different. There's also mental health counselors doing the same thing or in the same role as well. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So you mentioned that it started when you were in high school. You took the class, you were so excited, and seeing um, people or individuals struggle with mental health in your family as well drove you to or inspired you to go into this field,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not for me. Yeah, that didn't really work out. I liked chemistry in college, went as a chemistry major and changed my major my third year to something completely different. So it's inspiring and admirable that you knew what you wanted to do at such a young age, where most of the world is still trying to figure out, what they want to do, which is a test to your character and your drivenness, which I admire. So you're very welcome. So that from what inspired you then to what inspires you now to stay in the field of mental health. So does what inspired you back then still drive you now in your career? If not, then what's changed?
Yeah, I would say it goes a little bit deeper now in terms of my understanding of it. At that age, it's a very like, I like this or I'm interested in this. Compared to now, like there's a deep passion to see people walk in healing and restoration in their mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Where I have a greater understanding of the need, I have a greater understanding of the gifts that God has given me. I think before I knew those gifts were placed inside of me, I chose psychology, right? But God had that plan. I believe God ordained me to this particular field as a weapon to tear down and change the way that it's orchestrated or structured.
Okay.
So my why now is very different. Comparing to, I want to help people. I want to see people healed and transformed to be in a place where they no longer need me. Essentially,
Okay.
I would tell my clients that I want you to work me out of my job. Like I should no longer be needed when we're done.
Right. Right. And that's if somebody's working you out of if you're working yourself out of a job, that's just a testament of how effective you are.
Yeah.
Right. So it's amazing. And I'm sure you have many people who have testimonies of being counseled by you and you walking them through the processes that you do. And now they're no longer in therapy and they're no longer in counseling and they're walking in a healthier place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, So you just previously mentioned like now you want to, I guess, challenge or change the construct of how psychology or that field is, um, how it has been set up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um, right now, I would say, even with the growing awareness of mental health, don't get me wrong, we are a lot more aware of mental health and emotional wellness than we were when I was in high school or when our parents were coming up. But there's still such a huge stigma around getting services. And it's like an overarching stigma. And then there's certain populations within that. Say, for instance, people of color. There's still a huge stigma with attending to our mental health. And then people of color, as well as the Christian community. there's still a huge stigma about attending to our mental health. So imagine being a person of color in the Christian community. There's like this huge barrier with talking about it, acknowledging it, much less knowing how to address it. You know, so I think that that particular area is something that I'm very passionate about, not only to bring awareness, but to be able to bring tools, so there is less struggle, and being able to equip other people to do the same thing that I'm doing, right? I'm one person, but Jesus would talk about, it's better that I leave and that the Holy Spirit's going to come and you would be able to have more access and more influence, more impact, is essentially saying. And no, oh, I'm not Jesus, but the idea is, if I'm one person with these tools and this passion, that's not enough. That's not enough. So I believe that God is going to give me the ability to impact and influence, train and build up other clinicians or other people in the field to do the same thing. Multiplication, just like Jesus did.
Wow, that is amazing. So from my experience, I'll say, and just being completely honest,
Yeah.
I have seen, growing up in the idea of mental.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the Caribbean. Okay, I grew up in Guyana, GT. Okay.
GT.
So the idea of someone going to a counselor or going for therapy.
Why you wearing clothes?
So that's what it was. It was just like people going for therapy was, when you heard that, it kind of like made you feel a type of way towards that person. And then also me growing up in the faith, coming to the US and understanding that people are only hurting spiritually, but they can use the help of talking to someone, has been like kind of like stifled, right? So I can see your drive to be more transparent and about how we talk about ourselves and how we feel, not just physically but also emotionally, and talking about our emotions is okay.
It is?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I'm learning that. I'll say that I'm learning that, right? So I can tell that that's something that drives you to be more open, because I've seen too many people really not talk about emotional hurts from the past, and it affects their relationships 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years down the road.
And then their children, and then their children's children, and their children's children's children.
Yeah, and it's generational, and it's a generational silencing that's happening. So it's so important, and I just want to, if I don't say this at the end, commend you for the work that you're doing in peeling back the lid of that, and allowing the light of God, allowing the light into, and all emotional wounds being attended to. So yeah.
That's good.
So I know what drives you today. Go ahead. Sure.
So even breaking down what therapy is, right? Often people think of it as only talking. And that's my only view of therapy. Then I'm like, I could do that with my girlfriend on the phone. You know, like it's not just talking. It's what's happening in that intimate space is a lot more than talking. There's sometimes when the person can't talk. There's sometimes when, you know, we might be using music, we might be using dancing, we might be using art, we might be using just the presence of one another. If someone is, say, in such particular grief at that time, I don't need to come up with words. I'm sitting next to them and then with a garbage can. And that could be therapy. So even understanding like oh, I don't know what to say, or I don't have anything to say today, so I don't need therapy. It's just not. It's not just talking.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Like the presence of someone, even with grieving, right?
Yeah.
I've been in trainings through college. If you're counseling or helping a student along and they have a loss, sometimes just sitting next to them, like
Mm-hmm.
just your presence there shows them that you are, just gives them a sense of hope and encouragement. I just want to go to a comment that someone said
Yeah.
in the chat, and they said people think you go to therapy. People think if you go to therapy means that you're crazy. That's really not the case.
Come on.
How do you feel about that statement? And yeah.
That's the stigma that I was talking about earlier, right?
Hmm.
Therapy equals I'm crazy.
Mm.
I'm coming after that. Like, I want
Yeah.
to tear it to shreds, and it hurts my heart every time someone hears it. When I inquire about therapy or a therapist, they say, "Why, you think I'm crazy?"
Mm.
So I would say, first and foremost, it's not true, right? Um, when we consider what mental health is the state in which I am operating emotionally or mentally. No,
Okay.
it's what physical health is. We don't say, "Oh, let's talk about our physical health," and be like, "I'm not crazy. Something's
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with me." But yet that with mental health, as
Wow.
if we literally are saying something is wrong because we're bringing it up. But actually, mental health and mental illness are not the same. We use them synonymously, but they're not the same. Everyone has mental health, not everyone has mental illness.
Mm.
And mental health is a continuum. If perfection of mental health is here, mental illness is on the other side of that spectrum, and I can be here, I can, like, it's so many different areas in which I can be, and that will change depending on what season I'm in my life, what I'm experiencing currently in my life. When I consider what I'm exposed to right now in this season, between pandemic, between the deaths of my Black brothers and sisters being poured out on the street and me being
Wow.
exposed to their dead bodies,
Mm.
my mental health is not where it can be, right? That does not mean that I am mentally ill. So
Yeah.
being able to understand mental health is not a dirty word. Mental illness is not a dirty word either. But we wouldn't shun or call someone crazy if they had diabetes, if they had cancer. Why do we do that when someone is mentally ill? So that's first a question to ask ourselves, because we can think about, what's happening in the media and how that's projected. But if
Yeah.
you think about and talk about mental illness or someone that has a mental illness, right? Do
Yeah.
you use words like crazy? Do you use words like retarded? Do you use words that are offensive? So that's something to think about first, like taking that inventory of what does it mean to you? And also, okay, how can I use different language to be able to incorporate the truth about mental?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. You actually went into um my my next question, which is break the difference between mental health and mental illness.
Yes.
Which is like you're right, it is synonymous. If somebody says that they are says anything like mental health, like you automatically think that it's something to do that they're crazy.
Yeah. We think immediately of someone talking to themselves. We think immediately of someone that's in and out of the hospital. We
Yeah.
think immediately of someone that's on medication.
Wow.
When I think about the people that I see on a day-to-day basis, they can be struggling with relationships. And
Mm.
they can be struggling with going from junior high school to high school or high school to college, and that transition is hard. So they're seeing a therapist, right? Most of the reasons in which we're attending therapy is not actually what comes to our mind when we say mentally ill.
I think um a lot of what I guess plants those seeds of the crazy, like mental health is crazy, are
Mm-hmm.
those ads that are that they play on TV. Like, do you feel sad? Right? Do
Yeah.
you are you tired? Do you
Yeah.
feel sad? Like,
Who's not gonna? Yes.
you know, like automatically people think that there is something wrong with them. Like, and I know so many people, I'm sure you know so many people who see these ads who may be grieving, right? And they're sad, and then this ad comes on BET late night, and it's just like, do you feel sad? Maybe you're depressed. And then we see that, internalize it, and it's just like, yeah, maybe I am, and then start this cycle where we're like, where we self-diagnose and then we start acting out on it, which
And
is
part
pretty
of
sad.
that, those commercials put up a solution that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Mm.
They say, do you feel sad? Do you feel tired? Do you feel depressed? Here's Alexa, right? Solution to the problem instead
Mm.
of Christ Jesus. Does medication have a place? Yes, that's a whole nother video. We can talk about that at some point. But what I'm saying is we don't hear the idea of bringing light to a situation and processing our experiences with another healthy individual with boundaries that's non-judgmental as the solution. We see
Mm.
medication because it's it's promoted as a quick fix,
Mm.
but it's often a band-aid to a gunshot wound, right?
Wow.
So eventually I'm gonna bleed out and I'm gonna need another band-aid and another band-aid. I have to keep coming back to this person that's providing me with this coping tool. But what I believe about therapy, it's not about feeling better, it's about being better.
Mm. That's good. That's
Right?
good.
A lot of people go to, like the people that do go to therapy and say, okay, I want to speak to a counselor. They just want to make me feel, they want me to make them feel better.
Mm.
And like, emotions are given by God, not Satan. So that means the good ones and the bad ones are God given. I can't take away your emotions.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
sometimes you will not feel good. I am
Yeah.
not the super guy, you
Gotcha.
know. But how about being better? That means my state of being, whether the emotions come or whether they go, I can still function and I can still relate to others and I can still operate and do the things that I'm supposed to do. So the emotions don't have to dictate my decisions. I can acknowledge them. They're healthy. They're God-given. I don't like them right now, but that's okay. That's being in a place where I learn to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. That's so cool. Just jumping back real quick, like we try to put a band-aid on a gunshot wound or like the quick fix. And just going back to the analogy of like how we treat physical health and emotional health,
Mm-hmm.
like when in physical health, when if somebody's working out and they try to get a quick fix, right? They start taking these chemicals, right? Whether it be testosterone or whatever. Um, it can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Some that are there's no recourse to. So it's dangerous, like in physical health, and it's it's dangerous in emotional health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to share that. Like we have, so what you're saying is we have to treat our physical health and emotional health in the same respect in terms of treating it.
Yes. And I would also our spiritual health.
Okay.
Like as believers, I love Jesus. I'm a Jesus follower. My shirt says Jesus on it. In the Christian culture, we'll grow spiritually mature, but then be very emotionally immature.
Mm.
So we look like Popeye, like these big muscles in our arms, and our legs are so weak and scrawny. You know,
Wow.
the will of God is not for us to be immature in any area. He's not pleased if we speak in tongues but don't know how to regulate our emotions. There
Wow.
be a level of maturity in your spiritual health, your emotional health, your physical health, your relational health, your financial health. I could keep going. But
Got it.
there's
Yeah.
all of those areas are important to God. You know, so when we shy away from talking about mental health in the church, it's not honoring God. He died for our mental health too.
Yes, he did. That's true. That's so true.
He took stripes for our mental health too. It's not
Yeah.
just for cancer. It's for depression too. It's for anxiety too.
Yeah, definitely. Amen. So great. So great. And
I'm passionate.
right. I hear the passion. I can hear the passion in your voice. And it's I believe it was Peter Scazzaro who wrote a book. What is it called?
You cheating and looking in my library.
I am Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, I think it's called.
Yes.
If just quick plug, if you have not read that book, go pick it up. It's a great resource. Me and my wife, we've used that, and like just going through it just helped us to grow so much. Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Thank you, Troy. So yeah, quick plug. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. So, you recently started Lyte Talks, which is your YouTube channel.
I did.
Lyte Talks. Everybody's know how to spell talks. So what do you hope to accomplish on that YouTube channel?
Wow. Okay, I'll go bigger than the channel.
Okay.
But I'll go bigger than the channel. The channel is a platform. My office is a platform. Instagram, the pulpit is a platform. God will provide for me different platforms, but the message is going to be the same. I want you to win in your relationships. I want you to grow in your emotional and spiritual health. I want to be able to provide tools, not just awareness. So when I say, okay, emotional health, it's important, but it's just like, well, Nickeema, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to provide tools and then be able to make sure that people understand that it's not separated from the faith. The principles and the principles essentially that's set up in the Word of God, they're for us to be able to live healthy, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, financially, all of those different things.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's a voice that's important to bring to the table, because even like as the Lord was speaking to me about my purpose, I think we all do this as humans. I went researching and looking for people that were doing what I felt like the Lord was telling me to do, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. You know, I hear about Christian counseling, I hear about biblical counseling, but it was like, it's like it's already, say biblical counseling, it's in the church instead of like in the marketplace where it's accessible to everybody.
Wow.
So God is like, start a YouTube channel. There's no barriers or gates that's going to keep people out that might not ever walk into the church.
That's good.
There's barriers in the mental health office, right? Because there's some people that will never walk into the therapy office with me, but they'll be in my church. So how can I provide access for everybody. The same.
Free healthcare for everyone. Um, yeah, I mean, it's that is amazing what you are doing on Lyte Talks, and the content that you give week to week. You know,
Videos?
I've been following you from jump. I've been with you from day one. Yeah, it's so great, and I've even learned, and I live in the same house with you, so you know, and I'm constantly learning every day, every time you post a video, you know, and we as you talk through the content, it's just like, dang, like, well, first, I'm just like, how did I get so lucky to marry this awesome woman? Second, uh, brownie points, guys, if you're, you know, um. And the second, I'm just like, what a gem the body of Christ has with this channel. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too.
Like, you know, going viral. So if you guys have watched it, if you guys haven't, it's Lyte Talks, Lyte, on YouTube. Go check it out. Watch. There's a bunch of videos on there. I'm sure you will learn a lot. I'm gonna jump to a question. We're just gonna jump back to something that we might have covered, but one person asked, and it was Pauline2367
Mm-hmm.
asked, a lot of people of color don't believe in going to a therapist.
Yeah.
Just talk to us again about why you think that is.
The stigma. What we equate going to a therapist mean. I mean, culturally, it's not only the Black community. I would say the Black and the brown community, the minorities, right? Our family culture is rooted in what happens in my house stays in my house. You ever heard that before?
Yeah.
Right? We don't talk to strangers about our business. And then I think another thing that makes it a challenge is a lot of people that are in my seat don't look like me.
Mm.
So if the Black and the brown community want to come to therapy, they're speaking to someone that doesn't know anything about their culture. I wouldn't say always, but that could even be the perceived the perceived barrier.
Yeah.
The assumption, because this person doesn't look like me, they don't know anything about my culture. I think that those are the huge obstacles to people of color going to see a therapist, or even saying to another friend, yeah, like I went to see my therapist and then I went to the mall. Like, we'll be secretive about it even when we're going. So when we are going, we need to be openly speaking about and sharing that with other people so they can normalize it. If they know you, they know that you're not quote unquote crazy, or whatever the stigma is associated with that. They might be able to ponder and be like, well, if this person is going, then what's wrong with me going?
You know what just came in my head, just going back to everything that we've spoken about, the comparison between physical and emotional wellness, right? So would you say that a counselor or therapist would is the equivalent of what a primary care doctor is for physical health?
That's a great question. I never thought about it like that, but yeah. I remember, I think it was Dr. Anita Phillips. She's an amazing resource as well, a woman of the faith, and she is a licensed clinical social worker, and has her doctorate as well. Amazing resource. She was saying, well, if we go to check the doctor, for an annual every year,
Yeah.
why don't we check in on our mental health? It's not necessarily that I have to be in therapy for 30 years. That's the other misconception, that it's a forever thing instead of short-term work, where I go talk with someone, talk through some challenges that I'm facing. There's a starting point, there's a destination in mind, and then I say, hey, see you later, So I agree. I think it's a new perspective for me, so I'd probably take that in and bring it to the Lord and God, like, do you consider it the same way? I
Okay.
think that that's important too, because we come up with things that make sense but are not necessarily what God is saying about the situation. So
Okay.
I'll go back to you when I come to.
You'll get back to me. All right. All right. Great. Uh, so, um, the next question that I have and the next set of topics, I want to talk a little bit about trauma.
Okay.
You you spoke earlier what's happening in our world, in society right now with COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, the unfortunate event of that, and um, all the other Black lives that have been taken way too soon. Um, and I was reading an article, well, not the article, I read a headline that said the girl who recorded George Floyd's dying said that she was traumatized,
Yeah.
right? And in Black and Brown communities,
Yeah.
seeing that has that been normalized, right? Seeing that has been normalized that they don't think that images like that is traumatizing.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a question, but um, what do you classify as
Hmm. Okay. I'm gonna talk really fast because I want us to be able to cover a lot in regards to this. Please slow me down if you need to.
okay?
So trauma or traumatic event is not the same thing as me being traumatized. What I mean by that is me and you can go through a traumatic event. I can be traumatized, you cannot be traumatized.
Okay.
So just because I went through a traumatic event doesn't mean that I am traumatized.
Wow.
Now, for me to be traumatized doesn't mean that something is wrong with me and you're perfect. But what I bring to the table, I mean, I'll be transparent. What's going on right now, right? And you and I were speaking about this. We were in a time of prayer about what was going on in the nation and just the pain um, and fear that we were having as Black and brown people. We were in our living room, and then we started hearing gunshots go off for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then cop cars are driving back and forth. And my instinctual reaction at that time was to go and close the window, and I wanted us to go to the back of the house where we wouldn't have access to the window. And I didn't understand at that moment, but I was going back to a time when I lived in the projects in a community where they were shooting all the time. And it was like, this is what you do when this happens. And then you later told me that night when they were shooting later on that night, I was sleeping and I was flinching in my sleep. I didn't know that that event had caused a traumatic reaction, because that was what was happening. I was reacting to the experience of of the traumatic event.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that everyone is going to react in that way, but it's the idea that there was a compounded experience as well. You
Okay.
have the same experience in your childhood growing up around gunfire, for example. So when that experience was re-triggered in me, my body, my physical body, was in angst or anxiety or hypervigilance. So when we think about trauma, it's the reaction that we're having to an experience. Not deep at all. It's the reaction that we're having to an experience. My experience is my perception as well. Because like I was saying, we can go through the same experience and respond two different ways. We can grow up in the same household and respond in two different ways to what might be going on around us.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does. I'm still taking in everything that you.
Yeah. And like a traumatic event doesn't have to be Vietnam War. I think that that's also the misconception. A traumatic event doesn't have to be watching someone's blood pour out on the streets either.
Mm.
It can also be me being looking for the approval or the acceptance of my parents all through my life and being rejected time after time. That could be traumatic for someone.
Wow.
That can also be traumatic for someone.
Okay. So what you said, just to summarize in a very small nutshell, is traumatic. Like, just because someone goes through a traumatic experience may not be traumatizing. So what the girl saw in films traumatized her may not have traumatized somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no 1 + 1 = 2 formula on who would experience a trauma and who won't. I think that there's some protective factors that help people, resiliency, a support system, the idea that their mental health is already in a place where it's more stable. Like, those are some protective factors, but it doesn't exclude that person either.
So would you say that traumatic event after traumatic event after traumatic event, like, and it wasn't those three traumatic events didn't traumatize the person, but they kind of break down, like, fourth traumatic event now causes the person to be traumatized, right? That, like, kind of like how someone can be traumatized.
Absolutely. Like, what we're talking about is so individualized that it's hard to like grab it, you know.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is true. The idea that trauma can be compounded.
Okay.
It can be one traumatic event, or it can be several over the course of our lives. And depending on where we're at, what season we're in, we can respond differently. I was speaking to a woman last week. I had a virtual conference on Zoom, and not at okay, let me put it this way. I'm not talking about what happened on the call, but the idea that she said, I went through this, that was very traumatic. It didn't bother me. And I went through this after, and then I was like experiencing, you know, exactly what you said, like a very a traumatized response.
Got it.
But there's so many reasons for that, you know, where us sitting down and speaking to someone and getting counsel on putting those things together is exactly where therapy would be able to help, because not 1 + 1 = 2 for everyone. You know,
you kind of touched on where I was going. So I was gonna ask, like, managing trauma, not necessarily being traumatized.
yes,
It would be healthy for us to speak to someone to process that traumatic event, so that we can kind of build up that barrier or build up a resilience to being traumatized later on.
yes, like what I was saying before, because I was holding that in my body. I wasn't intellectually aware of it at the moment, but I had never processed going through all of those things over the course of my life. And then here it comes, you know, and it like just comes up to the surface. So I think being able to speak to someone, not only to just, you know, another stigma or misconception about therapies, oh, they just want to talk about my childhood. Like, it's a purpose and a place, because instead of being in a place where we're always like, you know, this is the problem, it could be the fruit, right? And we're trying to address the fruit of the issue instead of dealing with the root.
Mm.
Using an analogy of a tree. A tree has, you know, it has this huge trunk, and then it has roots, but it bears fruit. And that fruit, say if we're talking about physical health, that fruit could be a cough, a sneeze, a fever, but the root of the issue is a cold.
Got it.
Okay, so I can take a cough suppressant, but that's not going to deal with the cold. So
Mm.
it happens in our mental and our emotional health. We're like, I'm lying, I'm withdrawing from people, I'm depressed, I'm agitated, I'm irritable. Those are all fruit. Why? What's under that? What is the root of the issue?
Mm. Yeah.
So it goes back to what I was saying about feeling better or being better. Do we just want to whack the fruit off of the tree, and then the fruit will just come up, it will just grow back?
Yeah, yeah.
Connected to the root, the source of what is producing that.
Wow. Yeah. That makes sense.
Is there, I'm just looking at the time, if we want to be able to open the floor for questions as well.
Yeah, so we did have some questions come in. We have about 10 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your honesty and your passion and just all that you do. So the most recent question that came in says, how do you think replaying of the videos going around about Black and brown bodies affect our mental and emotional health?
Yeah, that I'm so glad that that person brought that up. Thank you so much. Say for me personally, I make the decision not to watch those videos, and we might have varying opinions on the why, right? I know the story, I know what happened, I'm enraged and angry. But for me to ingest that information or that content, for me personally, I'm a visual person. So I would have nightmares. I would have those images replaying in my mind, and the startle response that, you know, Isaiah told me about that I had when I was sleeping, it would be much worse if I had watched those videos. And that's what I do across the board in terms of, you okay? It's
Yeah.
across the board. So I make the decision to, and I would encourage other people to, if we're gonna watch it, then minimize it. Or why do we have to watch it 10 times?
Yeah.
There's things that we can do to protect our barriers, where we filter what we take in. What are we watching? What are we listening to? What are we taking part in? So I agree that it directly impacts our mental health. It's the same when we were dealing with COVID, and you know, I would speak to my mom about watching the news all day long.
Mm.
And it's like, of course I'm going to be anxious. Of course I'm going to be fearful. Of course I'm going to be depressed.
Yeah.
Mean that I don't inform myself? Absolutely not. But I inform myself, and then I have a level of separation so I can still have a healthy boundary. You know,
Yeah.
what would our life be like if we watched horror movies 24/7? You know, and also understanding that when we are ingesting certain content, what is the motive or the agenda for the people that are putting out the content, right? I'm ingesting all of that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great advice. Great sharing that. The next question is, what are some ways a person can or would overcome traumatic experiences?
I would say first and foremost, not keeping secrets. a lot of traumatic events that we experience, we don't talk about. I hear people say, I've never spoken to anyone about this. That's a dangerous place. The only person that loves secrecy is the devil. The only person that loves secrets is the devil. So if we're keeping secrets about what happened to us, about what we've been exposed to, about what we've heard, it's literally eating us up inside, because God did not design us to keep secrets.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is important, even if I'm not in a place where I want to go to a therapist as yet, or even if I have a therapist, it's not the idea that I can't speak to anyone else because I'm seeing a counselor. So
Yeah.
able to shine light on dark places is we're opening up our mouths, you know, whether it's we're speaking to a friend, a mentor, a pastor, a counselor, in a peer group, in a small group. So I would say that that's one of the first steps, to turn the light on.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of the lies that we might have believed because of that, whether it be I'm the only person that's going through this, it was my fault. Like there's a lot of lies that we believe about the things that we've experienced that make the experience even worse. So I would say that that's a good place to start.
Okay. So shine the light on it. Don't keep it in a lid.
Yeah.
Covered wound does not get treated.
That's good. That's it. Yeah.
So if to our viewers, you know, if you like are struggling to go to a therapist, or you're struggling with your emotional health, it is perfectly okay to speak to someone, because we would rather hear you than have you medicate, or even in some cases, some people feel that they're so alone that they unfortunately take their own life. And that's not what we want for you. So what we're doing here is we're turning the light on mental and emotional health. And treating your emotional health does not mean that you are crazy. It does not mean that anything is wrong. It just means you're taking care of the health of your emotions.
Yeah.
All right.
So you talked about the idea that we could turn to medicate the pain, or we can turn to even giving up and being hopeless and taking our lives. The other reaction that a lot of us have, and no one talks about this, is pretending everything.
Wow.
That doesn't go in the news. But a lot of us are just putting on a face, and we're not okay. So I would when I'm talking about opening up and being transparent and honest, it can cost us our physical lives if we get to the place where we are suicidal, but yet it can cause us a great deal when we are just putting on the face that everything is okay, and operating and doing all the actions, right? Even saying in a place where we're being honest about how we feel.
Amazing. Amazing.
God can't heal what we won't give him. You know, you don't go to a doctor and say, I'm absolutely fine, if you need open heart surgery.
That's so great. So as we wrap up, we have like 2 minutes left. What are any last thoughts, encouragement that you would like to share? And then I'll close this out. Thank you all so much for joining. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would say turn on the light. Speak to someone. Anyone that can be trusted, right? They don't have to have letters after their name. But also, if you are crying, if you are struggling, if you are worried, dry your eyes with the word of God. Get into his word. He is not turning his back on mental health or emotional health. He wants you to be healthy in all these areas. So I declare that hope will invade your home even now, that there would be a peace that surpasses all understanding even now, that will guard your heart and your mind according to Christ Jesus. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Instagram, Nickeema_Lyte Talks. You can also find my channel on YouTube, Lyte Talks, and my Twitter handle is @Lyte Talks.
All right, guys, you've heard it here. Go follow Nickeema Lyte. For those of you that don't know, this is my lovely wife. She's off the market, for those who are wondering. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us and the importance of us tending to our emotional and mental health. It's for too long it's been a stigma, but we're purposed to turn the light on, and not let anything fester. We will be healthy physically.
Like,
Go forth and shine your light. You guys have a blessed night. And as right here at Be the Light, our encouragement to you is let your light shine that men see and glorify God in heaven. Have a great night. We'll be in touch. See you next time.